everyone, welcome back. It's Charlotte from At Charlotte's House. Today, I just needed to make something. So I came up with this geometric wall hanging. I love it. I can't wait to show you how. Stay tuned. I would say this geometric wall hanging took me under 2 hours, and that is including letting the paint dry. I'm going to show you how I did it. It was really simple. You don't need too many materials. You don't need too many tools. I think you're going to enjoy it. Here's what we did. I have an idea for this hardwood. You can find this in the trim and decorative wood aisle. I believe it was $4.95, so under $5. You get a 2x4 sheet. One of the reasons I love it is that it is lightweight. I mean, it weighs nothing. It's still wood, so I get this nice grain, and then I already mentioned it's cheap. I have a few different objects that I pulled from my office. These are circles, so I'm going to trace these circles, but I would like to find a straight edge. I'm gonna make a few different shapes and then see what we're gonna do next. This is where you can really customize. You could do arcs, you could do triangles, diamonds, you name it, any shape will work. One of the things I had to do for this is I had to find the center point of my circle because I wanted to have semicircles. Now, I figured out how to do this a couple years ago. I had to Google it. I had forgotten everything I learned in my 6th grade math class. Here's what you do. You are going to draw 3 equal lines that touch 2 points of the arc of your circle. I chose 6 inches, so I drew 3 6-inch lines that touch the arc of my circle, and then I found the halfway point, so obviously that would be 3 inches. At that 3-inch point, I drew a perpendicular line, so I created a right angle, and I drew that line towards the center of the circle. All of my lines intersect at a point. That is the center of your circle. And now I'm just drawing a line. So now I'll have 2 semicircles. Once I had my shapes penciled on, I took this outside and I used my jigsaw to cut it. I have a confession. My garage is so filled with stuff. I mean, this is how I've always done it. This is just what I use as a sawhorse. I just put it on my shed and I cut right here. Obviously, choose a blade that you think will create the smoothest cut. I did not, so I had to do a little sanding after, but it was no big deal. So you see how I did a little triangle here? That's just so I can get in with my blade to do this right here. So I'm sort of twisting the hardwood around because I want as much of it on the shed as possible, or else it'll start to rattle around. So I'm just trying to get the right sort of balance. Caught just a little bit of the shed on that one. Not my first time. Once I had all my shapes cut out, I came inside and I sanded them down. I sanded the edges as smooth as I could. Again, if I had used a better blade on my jigsaw, I may not have had quite as much tear out, but plan to do a little bit of sanding regardless. There were a couple places where I had a little bump on the curve of my shapes. I found that it was easier to put the sandpaper onto the flat, hard surface of the table, and then I used that to help me even out some of these divots. You can choose any color that works. I tend to go for more color, but I have seen similar wall hangings that use a much more neutral palette, so this is where you can really bring in your own personality. So I'm looking at all my paint, and I'm trying to come up with colors, and I think I'm gonna sort of riff off of this rug, which I love. What do we think of these? I have a fairly colorful rug in my office, and I love to pull colors from things that are gonna be in the same space. So I found some paints that kind of match that rug, and I started with that. I had to mix the lighter pink and I had to mix the darker green, but ultimately I love the way these colors work together, and again, they look so fun in the space. One thing I often do when I am adding color to wood is I add a tiny bit of water to my paint. I love the way that this creates more of a colorful stain. When you're working with wood, I love to be able to see a little bit of that wood grain, and so if you dilute the craft paint just a tiny bit, you can usually see that grain coming through. I didn't dilute the paints quite so much for this project, but I can still see the wood grain. I left that edge unpainted, so I can definitely tell this is wood. Notice that for all of these shapes, I am using 2 holes. I was worried that if I only had a single hole down the middle, that if my balance was off, the shapes would hang a little bit crooked, and I didn't want that. One thing I should note is that I should have drilled all of these holes before I sanded and painted. There's going to be a little bit of tear out when you drill, and the way I did it, I had to go back and touch up a couple places where I sanded off some of the paint. I could have saved myself that step if I had just drilled first. Obviously, I was very eager to get to the color stage of this project. I'm using a 1/8 of an inch drill bit. It was plenty big. I have this gold 18 gauge wire. I cut it into about 2-inch lengths. That seemed to be plenty. I found the easiest way to connect all the shapes was to stick the wire through the holes in one shape and fold it over to hold it in place. Then I went ahead and I put the wire through the hole in the next shape, made sure that it was hanging evenly, and then I folded it over as well. This wood is super lightweight, and I didn't need to do anything other than fold the wires, and it holds everything in place perfectly. For the top shape, I'm only using a single hole. I created a loop with the wire, and then I'm hanging it on a command hook. This was a super easy, super fast project. I think there are a lot of really fun ways that you can personalize or put your own spin on this. So if you try to make this geometric wall hanging at your house, please let me know. Send me a DM on Instagram, email me. I'd love to see your projects that were inspired by something that I did. Every time I close these doors and I have a Zoom call or a Skype, all I have is this big white door. So I'm super happy to have a little bit of pattern, a little bit of color back here. And again, this was just a fun, easy project that I could do in the hour and a half that my kids are at school, and I'm really happy with it. One thing you may have noticed that I did not until it was too late is that at some point in the process, I flipped over the top semicircle, and I didn't realize this until I had put the entire thing together, and it looked a little bit different. So I hung it up, and it looked a little different. And it wouldn't be a project if I didn't screw something up. This is how I wanted it to go. So now I need to fill some holes. So I actually did have to go back and fill some of my holes and resand and repaint. I didn't show this part, but note that mistakes were made, but I was able to fix them, and I don't think you can even tell. As always, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you click that little bell icon, you will get notified when I share videos in the future. Have a great day, everyone.